Hello and welcome back to Progressive Mindset with myself, Jason Kemsley.
And me, Bradley Monday. Today, we're going to talk about turning your passion into profit. We're going right back to the beginnings, right? We're going to... Really, this episode is for anyone that hasn't yet started, but has all of the makings and really feels like an entrepreneur, but doesn't really know how to start, right?
Or they might be lost in their business thinking, is this the right thing for me?
This isn't my passion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, to kick off the episode, we are, to set the scene, I guess, we are talking about starting small, thinking big. Understand where you want to go. That might be 2, 3, 5 years. What it is that you want to create, but starting small. I want to start with, hey, I'm working a 9 to 5 right now. Where do I go? Where do I start? Right?
Absolutely. And if it's okay, I'm going to throw in some examples of real world businesses during the course of this podcast.
Of course.
I want to kick off with one straight out the bat to just get the adrenaline tingling to make someone want to be fired up. Your exact scenario is GoPro. So I was doing some research on GoPro before this episode, and it was founded by a surfer who just wanted to record what he was doing and share it with his friends and family. He started small. All he wanted to do was improve what he could be doing. The guy's borderline taken over the world now. But it all came from a passion, a hunger, a desire to just help himself. He started really small with the concept.
And had a need.
Absolutely.
There was a gap in the market, and went and fulfilled it. So let's focus on, you've had other businesses, I've had other businesses. Our current business now was started out of not so much identifying a need, but you might be in a business right now where you go, I could just do this better than it's being done. And That's not meant to disrespect the business that I was working in, but it just had a different drive. It was solely money orientated. The customer experience wasn't the number one driver. And so I was an IT technician at the time, it was, there's got to be a better way, a more customer centric way to do this. And almost fell into, but hang on a minute, now we're doing our own thing and we're actually delivering on this dream. You've done sort of clothing. Do you want to talk a little bit about what was the...
It's a weird one. It just came out of... It was done for the wrong reasons. With all my learnings now, I look back on, it was done for the wrong reasons. It was done for profitable purposes, I think, too much, rather than focusing on the passion and then, like we're going to talk about, that can lead to profit. I think it was done for the wrong reasons, but for me, I'm someone that likes to try as much as I can in my life, and I'd strongly encourage anyone listening that maybe doesn't know their passion to do so. Try as much as you can, whether that's hobbies, whether that's traveling, whether that's, I don't know, going to do something in particular with your friends. You've got to try as much as you can, in my eyes, so that you can work out what that passion is. For me at the time, it was in the gym. That was where I'd blow off steam, and so I said, right, I'm going to turn this into a business and produce gym clothing. The learnings were not there at the time, I think, and more so our time was occupied with where we are now, which isn't a bad thing. So, I mean, straight out the gate, I just identified the thing that meant that I lost track of time. Okay. Is how I define a passion. For me, a passion is something you can do and you just lose track of time. You must have one of those things where you look at your watch, it's 12 o'clock, you start doing that really cool thing that you enjoy doing, and then suddenly, oh, it's 4 o'clock. Where's the time gone?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I do, or I guess what I did do in terms of delivering the product, that's long gone, but it was the delivering of the product, the being the IT guy. Computers were my hobby.
Absolutely.
And it turned it into a business. It meant I've had to go and find new hobbies. You can't do it all the time, but so okay, I just wanted to focus in on, you said something there that I think is important to elaborate on, possibly unpack a little bit, is you said the clothing business that you were involved in was, although it surrounded your passion, probably had the wrong drivers behind it. And starting a business just chasing after the money?
Absolutely.
I think it's a good example of actually it didn't bear the fruits, because it's not got. How do you maintain that drive and the burning desire to win when
Absolutely.
it's not surrounded by the passion? So I guess for those that have a fear of, and it's a scary time, right? You're just about to leave, or the plan will be to leave full-time employment to go and do your own thing. As long as you've got that burning desire to make this thing come to fruition, you're already well on the track for success.
Absolutely. I think you can go one of two ways. So I went the direction of, this is something I'm passionate about and I'm going to use it to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that we're very much talking about is, this is something you have a passion about. You go do it as a consumer or the person that enjoys that passion, and therefore you make the decisions based around what the consumer or particular person like you would want to see. So
For sure.
to take you back to my example, I was making decisions based on that material because it will be more profitable, rather than, as someone that loves this, I would love to see this.
Yep.
And so I think that's a super prominent point, is if something is your passion, you know the market typically, or you've been around it, you're typically part of the circle. You know, we could take this, let's say you enjoy 10-pin bowling as a random off the top of the head. You're in the clubs. You know probably what makes are around. You know what the messaging looks like. You know what the stereotypical person in that environment's like.
Yeah.
You can very easily, if you lean into that, make something very tangible that would apply to that market. I unfortunately made 50% of it that, and then made decisions based on what will make this the most profitable. And so I think that's unsuccessful from day one. I think it's a very difficult business to generate anything meaningful out of.
Yeah, I would agree. The moment that we start chasing money, we make wrong decisions, rather than, for many years our business was run where money was a byproduct of doing something awesome.
Absolutely.
And I think that changes as your business grows and you get further down the line, and there has to be a structure in terms of, well, where are we heading? Where are we going to be? You know, it grows up a little bit, but from the outset, absolutely you can focus in on that. You know, I love a book.
You do.
And from the outset, you're about to embark on running a business.
From the outset's the book, or from the outset you're about to lead into the name of the book?
From the outset, I'm leading into the book.
Okay.
From the outset, running a business is, you've got this skill set, likely you've got a skill set that you're wanting to put to good work. For me, it was IT. What about all the other factors of business? Where do you start? And I picked up a book. It was called The Small Business Startup Workbook. It's a bit dry, but very, very, it was really helpful. And you go through it and you fill in, you ask you the right questions. It makes you think about certain things. All
This
the way
is an
from
interactive book.
Yeah, you're meant to fill it out as you go, and I'm sure there are many. This is the only one I ever used, and since then I've been reading other topics. But from a, what do I need to think about to start a business? It goes through, right, let's get the passion down. Let's really focus on that long-term goal. Make sure we understand where we're going. But it also breaks down, what is it that we're going to sell in order to make a margin? Have we considered all of our costs? It goes through absolutely everything that you're going to need to know in order to create what is the grounding of a good business.
I think that's it. And to take it back to examples, and I know this is I'm going to bore people with examples. Gymshark in the UK reminds me of that. I think it's now well into $1 billion valuation. Ironically, obviously, the market I was just talking about, it was started in the house, printing shirts, taking them to an exhibition because the people that they surrounded themselves was there, so it made good sense. When they reached a certain point where it was, you have to start thinking about numbers, the founder, Ben, said, I'm not taking that position because this is my passion. So he went back into the product design team and hired a CEO.
Yeah.
So you really can take this sort of as far as you want it. You don't have to necessarily ever worry about numbers in some way, shape or form. I think the biggest thing, and if I could just touch upon this, is we talk about what it can lead to looking forward. there is a real problem with mental health in the world, or the rise of it being spoken about. There must be a correlation between doing what you love and good mental health, and doing something you don't enjoy and bad mental health. I don't know where the correlation sits there, but as someone that really enjoys what I do and I don't dread waking up in the morning, it really does help me feel fulfilled. And so, I feel like I make a difference. I feel like I make an impact. And I think everyone in the century, we want to be doing something where we feel like we make a difference. And the only way we can do that is by doing something that we care about and we're passionate about. And that's how we're on the same page, right? Because we both care about what we do.
Yep. You've tied a couple of bits in that I wanted to talk about on this episode.
Let's dive in.
Overwhelming was one of the words that I believe you used there, or you're talking about this. That's where it can be overwhelming, right? And you can start to get into a pretty dark place with running a business. So identify the mountain that you want to climb and then start breaking it down into manageable chunks. If people that go and I've never climbed a mountain,
they do it on mountains. They do. This is the first part of the route. This is the summit or whatever where we take a break. This is the next part.
And that's manageable. That's achievable, right? If you look at the top and go, nah, that's not achievable from where I am now, right here down the bottom. You need those manageable chunks and be working towards what's next. Celebrate that success. I think that's really important. And I know that we forget to do it from time to time. Celebrate the success when you arrive at the first one, plan the next one, and just keep chunking it away. And it might be you get there in 10, 20 years. Does it matter if that's what keeps you fulfilled?
And this is what we spoke about, right, with entrepreneurship. It's not about the outcome necessarily. We spoke about lots of examples in the last episode. For all of the big household names that have got to where they've got to, Elon Musk, etc., we spoke about, it was about the journey. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you don't reach that ultimate end goal, because you've enjoyed it all the way along.
Indeed, and it can change and grow, and having those pauses along the way when you've done the manageable chunk, you can take your learnings and you can reassess, right, and go, is that actually still where we're driving to, or is there a better way, and those kind of things. So it's a nice place to stop. It also leads on to focus. Now, I've jumped ahead a little bit. We're running a business at this point, but it's super important to have the success and the enjoyment that you want, to make sure you're doing the right bits. That bit that you were passionate about, so passionate that you left your job, took the risk, and started a business. The rest of it, you should consider outsourcing.
Absolutely.
Accounts, if you're not, unless you're creating an accountancy business, but take entire business functions. And if that's not your skill set, not something you enjoy, at the earliest possible moment, and it might not be from day one. Accounts, they're fairly work with someone, but you might be doing the day-to-day stuff. There's not many transactions. You can control it, but there will become a time quite early on where you go, I've got a professional for that.
Where it's their passion.
Yep. Get it out to them. And you want to find someone that's small enough to care in those early days. I think we've changed accountancy firm along the way, and you change various different outsourcers, because in the initial sense, you almost want... We were lucky enough where our accountant spoke to the managing director of the accountant when we went in to see him. And I'll never forget when he said, great, until you get to 250 grand turnover, you're not a real business. And that was the end of the first year. And for me, that worked. That was I'll show you. We'll be a proper business in the next year. Then, if that's the marker,
yep.
And that's what you need, and then you might outgrow those outsourcers and move on.
I'm a big fan of that sentiment. And going back to the word correlation, if you do something you're passionate about, your chances of success are significantly higher. Mm-hmm. If you actively participate, if you actively start a business doing something you care about, something you love, you put in the hours without realizing, you don't shy away from the difficult tasks, you always are pushing the barrier, you're always pushing the next thing that's possible, and your chances of success have quadrupled, whatever the figure is. So by simply just doing what you care about, you already have a better opportunity of creating the life you may want subsequently, which I think is super powerful. And, going back to when you sat with the accountants and he made that statement, if you weren't doing what you loved, you wouldn't have had the fire to go and prove that he was wrong. But because you enjoyed what you do, and I'm sure you couldn't wait, or you went home and carried on working, you can't do that if you don't enjoy it. It's a toll, and you get burnout, and burnout's another key thing, right? Is strikes every entrepreneur at some point. It doesn't feel like work as much when you are doing what you love.
Yep.
And so whilst burnout obviously can still physically happen and mentally, actually it's less of an issue.
No,
because you enjoy what you do.
I agree. And talking to people that are beginning and looking to embark on this journey, you touch on hard work. It will be. Forget your Instagram reels where you're going through and you're seeing, I was a millionaire by 19, or I'm going to retire super early, or make all this money putting no hours down. I'm not saying those opportunities aren't out there, but they are few and far between, right? If you're not ready to put in the work and that doesn't fit your lifestyle and that sort of stuff, it doesn't come easy. So bear that in mind as well. Should we talk?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I see so many, follow my crypto trading signals, follow my FX trading, start this drop shipping and you can be a millionaire. Please F off. I'm going to pick what I enjoy. I'm going to work damn hard at it. And that's the real way to grab hold of life, because it's not about the money. It can't be only about the money, because otherwise I'm on a path to what?
Yeah, and you might do some of that stuff as a side. That as a side hustle where you're earning a little bit of extra money. It's never going to be the full-time job. Sure, and people get enjoyment out of having a little something that feels like a business. They're earning their own money, and I don't think we should knock getting involved in a side hustle if that's what you need. But in terms of what we're talking about and creating an enterprise, that's probably not the way to start.
They're not creating the Instagram stories because they're busy working hard.
Should we talk about the 9 to 5 then, and when to make the jump?
Sure.
Okay. So when is the time right? And
is the time ever right? I would ask as the first question. I don't think it's ever a perfect time unless you win the lottery.
Yeah, certainly don't wait for the perfect time. Wait for... I think it's an experience thing, right? If you've only just started out in the world of work and you haven't picked up the experiences that you're going to need to be successful in business, again, this isn't a broad brush. This is going to be everyone, but for the most part, you haven't learned enough to really maximize your chances of success. So I see loads of people that they'll hop from job to job to job to job. They're chasing the money rather than the experience. I think my advice would actually be, you are better to make sure, if you find somewhere that can offer you that opportunity for growth and you can involve yourself in the different areas of the business to learn those key skills, actually that is a very valuable thing to be doing. And then once you've got some of those skills, involved yourself and absorbed as much as you can from maybe that role, then it's time to... And you can be building up a little nest egg to see you through and make sure that you minimize that risk of running out of money. You're going to have external influences, partners, etc., that will be sharing those fears. You probably want to be saving up and be mindful of cash and that sort of stuff. Make sure you can support yourself for a period. I think it's quite difficult to predict, yeah?
It is, but I think often people put that bar too far away. I need a year's worth of savings. Mm-hmm. A year's worth of savings, 6 months worth of savings. There is, you go back to Parkinson's theory, etc., where you'll make something last as long as you need it to. there is, and we were speaking the other day about the beta paradox that you were talking about. In a 6 month should be a long enough window to create a revenue generating, maybe even shorter depending on the industry, to create a revenue generating minimum viable business to cover my life expenses.
Yep.
If you are waiting for I need a year's savings, I need 2 years savings, I would question whether it's even worth the jump, possibly, because you clearly don't have the experience. Otherwise, you'd be able to achieve it in a shorter time frame.
Yeah, it might be experience. It might be the lack of faith in yourself. And again, going back to if you've got the passion, I think the next thing you need to really drive your chance of success are that faith in yourself that you will achieve. I would like to is not. That's not going to cut the mustard. I will be here in a year. I will be here in 2 years. That has to be not only the words that you use, but the thinking.
Absolutely. The positive affirmation. I can just see you now staring in the bathroom mirror, repeating after yourself. If this is okay, I'd just like to throw in another example at this point. I want to flood people with examples till we get to the end, just nuggets at a time, because this stuff, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And there are real large enterprise examples of everything we're talking about. I'm just trying to loop it back to...
No, I love it.
Pay attention.
Please do.
The other one I wanted to do was Airbnb. I was doing some research on many different companies. And actually, it's not until you start looking, you realise how many of these were passion-led businesses. Airbnb is a fairly simple story, but there were two people obsessed with travelling and obsessed with finding new places in the city, in the culture, in someone's house to stay.
Okay.
To the point where they then decided there must be other people like us that are struggling to find someone in Italy that we can stay with. So, and so they decided, let's spin something up. It was very small and then radically expanded once the need was identified. And I keep banging on about these, but some of these are huge organizations, but they were started by a consumer that had a problem. That problem was partly their passion. They knew how to make it best presented. They knew how to present that messaging. And so they identified with the problem they were trying to solve.
Yeah. Okay. If I'd have known we were bringing examples, I'd have loved to have bought some on smaller businesses. What I don't want to send to the people that are listening that are about to embark on this journey is that it's meeting the caliber of the businesses that you've just mentioned throughout, or nothing.
I can make up some company names and give you a story if you'd like.
So,
but we are one.
We are. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I was going to go with.
And we know of many.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of examples of this, and I had two final points to discuss on this episode. One was the planning for the future, and making sure that you know what's coming and where we're going, sort of 2 years out. At all times, making sure that that allows us to plan and understand what resources we're going to need. What does the team look like? And that's definitely in the workbook that I mentioned earlier in the episode. But super, super important to make sure that we're putting the right wheels in motion and we're going to the right places. Have we got enough revenue on? Do we need to? And we're identifying and fixing problems based on where do we want to be, and how do we get there? And you're constantly chasing this bottleneck of what needs fixing next. Is it the pipeline? Is it the operational delivery of that? And is there anything, before I want to talk a little bit about faith in yourself and just re-drive that forward, so there are other things that you want to cover?
I have one more example. If I had it wrote down, so I'm just going to share it. It's a company that I'm a big fan of, Patagonia.
Okay.
And the reason I think it's a great example is because although they've got bigger as a business, their values have been consistent throughout. And you hear countless stories. And they are a case study for passion into business. They're a case study for putting the consumer first. They're a case study for so many different episodes we could do. But Patagonia was started by 4 people. They were climbers and surfers that wanted a more economically friendly way of producing clothing, and just slowly grew. As we stand today, they still do the things such as, you've damaged your top, send it back to us, we'll repair it free of charge, so we don't have to give you a new top. And they've carried on this mindset throughout. I mean, I think it's like every t-shirt you buy, they plant a tree, or there's so many incentives wrapped around. And it's created a bit of a cult following, and turned that marketplace into, it's become a business that is a passion for people in those sectors to be a part of it as well. So I think it's a super cool case study, because it was started out of a passion, but it's then given other people passion to become part of it as well. And I love that, when you can create something that fulfills your passion but also leans into everyone else's passion. That is ultimately the most powerful thing.
And a really good example of doing something you love first, and then money being the fallout of doing what you love. There's some of the things you just mentioned there are definitely not moves because they're commercially viable.
It wasn't commercially viable to make an eco-friendly t-shirt and sell it at £80. You know, it probably didn't make business sense to any business advisors at the time, but they said, no, this is what we care about, this is what we love, and if it's just us that wears it, I'm sure they were fine with that at the time. The last point before we jump onto yours was just a super simple one, but for me, the biggest thing about working in your passion is I consume knowledge like I never possibly could if I was working on something that I didn't believe in. Yeah. The brain is a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating organism, and when you are consuming things that you're passionate about, when you're consuming things that you care about, that knowledge is retained. That knowledge almost grows and grows and grows. And so you will find that you become far more knowledgeable than you ever possibly could have realised if you care about it in the first place. And I think we're probably, hopefully, both somewhat examples of that.
Yeah.
You ask me what happened last Friday for dinner, I couldn't tell you. If you asked me what happened last Friday in work, I could tell you, because I care about what I do.
Yeah. No, I think you've nailed it. And that is why I've always got a book to refer to, right? It's just the consumption of the knowledge is so much easier. So I want to end, if it's all right with yourself, on having faith. Having faith in yourself. Having faith that you can achieve the top of the mountain across whatever amount of time that you believe appropriate. You've got to believe you can do it. And I really do believe that in order to succeed in something that is difficult, going against the grain, not everyone starts a business, not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur, but I think you can exercise your entrepreneurial habits and desires in other ways as well if running a business isn't for you. But I think you have to believe that whatever you've set out to do is going to be a success. And it's not just enough to come up with the words. If it's not going on in your brain and you're not really believing it, then it's probably not the right time. And actually find ways to work on yourself first, so that you do get to a point where you go, we are going to do this. I can achieve this. And begin to use language that suggests that, rather than I wish and I hope. Because actually, like you said, the mind will use that, and it will bring that into fruition for you. I strongly believe that. Is there?
I completely agree, and I think it's almost worth thinking, if money wasn't a problem, would I do it? You want to work out if the lack of faith is financial backed. If you, and maybe we'll end with a motivational close to the microphone, if you believe in what it is you're creating or you're doing, if you believe it really makes a difference, if you believe there are people out there like you that would benefit from this, if you believe it is a long-term feasible idea, what's the worst that can happen? You go back to what it is you were doing?
For sure.
Because there's opportunities out there everywhere. The worst case is you turn around and say, well, it didn't work that time. Maybe I wasn't quite ready. rather than regretting ever starting in the first place.
And I think that's a huge driver, what you've just said there, to bring down the risk. That's certainly what I did when founding our current business. Was I could always go back to living with my parents. I could always go back to just doing the 9 to 5, right? And we've used these two words on many of our episodes so far, is consistency and persistency. Once you've got the faith, go and deliver it before you leave the 9 to 5. Go and be consistent in what you're doing and have that persistence to overcome your problems, and continue the fight when you get a setback, and you're set up for success.
So believe in yourself, be persistent and be consistent, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.